Hi there, my name is Troels, and you might have noticed that there's been a little addition to this thing here. This is a nose monkey, and my teenage daughter is convinced that I'm like a human twin, or that our DNA is so closely related that there is barely any difference. I'll let you be the judge of that. Maybe more in profile, I'm not sure. That has nothing to do with this video. This video is all about 66 trombones. And why the number 66? Well, 66 trombones is what this library is about. It's the follow-up to our 66 tubas, which was the follow-up to our 66 basses. And we've gotten some questions and concerns. Some people are wondering, like, are there religious or non-religious reasons for doing these things? And I can assure you there's not. 66 is simply how many professional bass players we could find, and that was difficult. But if we hadn't learned our lessons in terms of logistical nightmares, we surely learned it with the 66 tubas. We had people flying from 13 countries, beautiful professional tubists or tuba players. And to find that many is very, very difficult. And we almost had the same nightmare with the trombones. I think we have 10 or 11 countries come together for these sessions. And it's always so cool to work with everyone and see what goes on, and the conductors and the hundreds of people involved in doing something like this. You know, there are truckloads coming in. It's awesome. And this library is all about, and the whole Legion concept with these 66 is all about pushing the sonic bar to where we don't really want to push it any further. There is a point of diminishing sonic returns, and it happens around the number 66, maybe even a little bit before sometimes. With the trombones, I think it's the right number. This is the most beautiful, big, badass, balls to the walls kind of cinematic sound. It's a concept we've been working on for quite a while in terms of recording these big things. About 6 years ago, I had this dream where I saw an array of 20 timpanis, and we decided to record that in the Czech Republic in a beautiful hall called Slim. And we've actually recorded all our mega libraries in the hall. It started with the timpanis that became a 240-piece orchestra, also known as Majestica or 8W for VIP members. I then decided to do a 200-person choir, which is our Lacrimosa, just to sort of get the volume with the choir to the orchestra as well. And then Colin and I decided to make a switch and do our acoustic grand ensembles. We actually just updated both of those libraries. If you ever want to hear what a marimba is supposed to sound like, or a glockenspiel, that's the library, because we have an array of 7 marimbas and 7 glockenspiels in a beautiful hall, 4 grand pianos, 5 harps, cymbalong ensembles, acoustic guitar ensembles, all that. It's really just to try to push the boundary, like sonically, what happens when you get all these instruments together in a beautiful hall. Slim is cool, unlike a lot of other halls, because it's so modern that we can adjust the reverb. It's adjustable almost down to a second and up to 7 seconds in terms of its reverb time, so you can really sculpt the hall. That's one of the cool aspects about it. After we did acoustic grand ensembles, we did our VIP extreme ensembles, which was 10 basses, 10 guitars, 10 analog synthesizers, 10 drum kits, and 10 drum machines. All in these beautiful arrays, also recorded in the hall. And of course, we've got spot mics and all that if you want to isolate each of them. So anyway, that's a lot of numbers talk and big this and that. Let's get into the DAW. Let's listen to what these 66 trombones can really do in their full glory. And I wrote a demo called I Can Feel, which is sort of a little bit of a James Bondy kind of vibe to it. And I'm going to take you through track by track, and we're going to have some fun. So welcome to 66 trombones. All right, we are inside the DAW. Let me just play the track first, called I Can Feel, featuring 66 trombones and some other ADO instruments. And after I'm done playing the demo, we'll be going through each track and dissect the demo in great detail. And of course, we're also going to be listening extensively to the 66 trombones in all their balls to the walls epic glory.
Every time when it starts to rain, I remember. Every time when it starts to rain, I remember. I remember when we ran under it. Every time when it starts to rain, I remember us. I remember when we ran under it. Every time when it starts to rain, I remember us. I remember when we ran under it. I can feel you in my heart. You in my arms. I can feel you in my heart. You in my arms. I can feel you in my heart. You in my arms. I can feel you in my heart. You in my arms. I can feel you in my heart. You in my arms. I can feel you in my heart. You in my
The first thing that meets the eye or the ear is probably the trombones up here with this sort of very phrasy staccato miccato variation. We both have staccato and miccatos in the library, but I really enjoy this beautiful natural recording where they go like da 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 da. We have an offset switch. If you don't want as many da 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 staccatos in the beginning, you can actually use it to shorten it down, but so check them out. And it's a cool patch because it's both tempo synced, it also contains round robin, so every time you play the key, it's actually a new variation of the phrase, and it's also velocity based. So let me try to play something live here and just move the mod wheel. And you know, one of the weird things about this is that when you record ensembles this big, for example, if you listen to our 66 basses or tubas, they're enormously big. And sometimes you can lose a little bit of definition when things are that big. But in this case here, I'm playing like 6 notes times 66 trombones, no pun intended, and it really sounds clear and the clarity is there. Of course, you also got microphones, so if you want to go in and play around with mix, deca, wide, far, or trailer mix, you have those options. And in addition to the 5 main microphones, we also have spot microphones, so 5 spots for the ensemble as well. So depending on what kind of mix you're looking for, in this demo, I'm predominantly using the trailer mix. This is sort of pre-made, ready for epic music, and just works straight out of the box. But let me just try the different mics here so you can hear them in comparison. Next up is these patches here called Equinox clocks. That would be from our upcoming Hybrid Rhythms 2, or also known as Equinox library, which is all about modern contemporary rhythms, but with a variety of different tools, including these awesome TikTok sounds here. Another super cool patch, and this one sort of demos like the glory of the trombones, is our long crescendo here. And in this case, I use the glorious Valhalla shimmer to really beef up the sound. Sometimes it's cool to do that if you want to make something like extra big, but it gives you a fairly good idea about like the power of it. Let me show you some other patches here from the sustain group here. The way we organize our libraries for the 66 series is that, for example, when you load sustains, you get access to a variety of different sustains, including the whole ensemble playing muted, frullato, marcato, and a variety of different effects. Let me just show you from the top here. We also created these effects where they're playing sustains, but more in textural motions. There's constant small variation in them. Check out here, just take a single chord. It's beautiful because you get that natural, you can almost hear every player doing their thing. And as you can see on most of these guys here, you got CC1, meaning that these are dynamically controllable from your mod wheel. Let's check out the Crescendo short here too. And that's what I sort of mean when I talk about this big cinematic sound. You don't really want it any bigger than that. Sure, you want to put a subwoofer underneath to really blast it up, but here's another variation, yet another sustained but more textual. You can hear them like almost talk. One of the unique production tricks for epic music sometimes is to take sounds that are somewhat subtle, but beef them up in volume in the mix. You could almost call tension in piano or pianissimo. Check out these tremolos here. They do go up to a more sort of full glory, but even from the beginning, there's so much tension. And one of the ways you can do that is by having a really good violinist. Our first violinist in this ensemble here, when we did Anthology or Adagio and Agitato, happened to have a super, super fast vibrato, and it creates that tension even in pianissimo. And just a super tiny detail, but right when the tremolos are ending, I'm also lifting the piano pedal, and those small acoustic hints can be so beautiful in the music, just to make it sound a little more real. Yeah, that would be the normal timing, you know, the orchestra would wait, everyone let go at the same time, and don't quantize that kind of stuff, really just do it hand sculpted. And as you may know, I'm crazy about tuning, and especially bass sounds, or pushing sounds down the bass realm. Sometimes it works the other way, upper range, but it's always more forgiving when you go down. And in this case here, I made, I call them pizzicato, but just really big, beefy pizzicatos. All you do is to load Anthology. Solos in this case here, the solo bass, and down tune to 12 semitones, and you have a beautiful pizzicato. I'm also using another instance of the sustains, in this case crescendo short here for the beginning of the piece, and then later on in that sort of more melodic end section. Let me just trigger that instead.
I can feel you in my heart, you in my heart.
I mean, isn't that just the nicest chord? I just love this one. And there's also a little bit from our 1985 piano in the beginning, and it follows the melody track a little later in. In the case of the piano here, you can notice I'm actually using that sort of flam technique all across here. And if I recall right, I actually sequenced this and sat and moved things around, so it just got that perfect tiny flam when the piano is playing. And next up is this one here, and this is one of my sort of favorite things to do. If you're familiar with Century, we have our Century Ostinato, which is a library with over 25,000 ostinato samples. And the idea is that you have access to all the normal articulations, so spiccato in many different variations, marcato, bartok, and all that. But most importantly, we have 4 different tempo recorded ostinatos that are also dynamic, so you can sculpt them. And let me just try to play them here and then give you a couple of hints and how to use it. So in this case, I actually had both viola and cello playing together and set them both to MIDI channel 1. And if you notice here, we got different tempos playing. Let me just isolate this one up here. And it's super neat because you can use the mod wheel to sculpt the dynamics. And if you notice here, I'm actually using it twice as fast as it was recorded. Let me try to play it in its normal recording tempo. Anyway, you get the idea. I also used a little bit from our Dark Prophecy collection. This is in our Hybrid Tool series. Really, really beautiful, fat sounding synthesizers. I think in the last part in particular here, let me just play the whole thing here and then isolate the synthesizer. Very warm and fat and cinematic. And in isolation, it sounds like this. And let me just show you what goes on with the pitch bender. I sometimes like to play a bass sound, just a sustained sound, but then move my pitch bender to play the bass. And the reason I do that is just to give a really organic feeling to the way things are played. So I'm not just playing on the keys like I'm used to, but I'm actually trying to almost in a sort of theremin style to just sculpt it using the pitch bender. I'm surely doing that here. This is a sustained tone, but you can see a lot of stuff's going on. And Dark Prophecy is awesome that way. It's just so fat. You get those real analog things going. Also add a little bit of sine bass to the track. This is essentially to augment what goes on in the bass section of the brass, but it adds a little more warmth in the sort of subwoofer realm of frequencies and helps warm up the sound from the bottom. I thought it was neat when I made the composition to essentially use the vocal melody in the beginning, but just make it acoustically before I introduce the vocals. And for that, I used the Clarinet and RH Glockenspiel. Beautiful clarinet, very motive. And if you noticed in the beginning when I played it here, you can see that the legato is almost a little bit clunky, and that's done on purpose. I like to trigger the interval sometimes just to create a little more of those naturally occurring noises. You know, the player doesn't always get it completely right. So you can hear a little bit of droot, but once you put in the music, it sort of makes it shine a little more, if you will, in terms of what it would sound like in the more natural world. Here are the Glockenspiels. Let me just isolate the Glockenspiel alone here. It's using a synthesizer patch from H as well, called Water Smile, which is, we synthesized each of those ensembles as well. But this is just a Glockenspiel on its own. Super beautiful, one of my favorite sounds. Towards the end of the composition, I'm also triggering a variety of arcs. Let me just play the sequence here. This is using our long arcs, PFP. We actually have arcs in 3 different lengths and multiple dynamics we just thought the trombones were so freaking cool that we wanted to just art the hell out of them. So you have arcs in any possible variation you can think of. But this is the long one. And one of my favorite things, and I encourage you to do the same, is to play the long arc, play a deep fat chord with 6-7 notes on it, and just enjoy. We also recorded a massive assortment of bends, both in half note and whole note up and downs and different riffs. In this case here, I'm going to trigger it with the spot microphone so you can get a little feeling for what they sound like. And let me switch the reverb off as well, so you can just listen to the trombone spot microphone in their natural position in the Slyn Hall. We also got these super cool THX sort of effects. We also got these different assortments of effects clusters, both going from sustained tones into more clusters, total clusters, and cluster arcs as well. And that to me is one of those sounds you can't mimic with normal samples and just sit and fiddle around. You really need an ensemble with that many individual voices just doing their thing. It's just super cool. Each key is an individual art in this one. No, I'm not scared at all. And we got some very playable short notes. And we got 5 different types of legatos. And it gets like super artificial on the bottom. The sustained muted here was an experiment because we thought it was such a beautiful sound with the mutes, but imagine like a super slow type of portamento. This is a very unique articulation. We haven't quite done anything like this before, but you know, sometimes just push the bar a little bit for what you can do with an ensemble of 66 trombones. And we got some other legato connected patches for Lado, Raindrops, and Marcato. We also have a variety of unique presets that come with the library that are more sort of experimental takes on what you can do with 66 trombones. But I hope this video will give a little bit of an insight into this beautiful collection. It's really designed for cinematic music, obviously. I thought it could be cool to take it more in a pop direction or sort of a little bit James Bondy kind of track. But as you can hear, this is really designed for big, beautiful, badass cinematic music.
Every time when it starts to rain, I remember every time when it starts to rain, I remember when we ran under it. Every time when it starts to rain, I remember us. I remember when we ran under it. Every time when it starts to rain,
I guess there's only one remaining question, and that is what happens when you take 66 trombones, combine them with 66 tubas and 66 basses. Let's get into the DAW and find out, and thank you so much for watching, and more importantly, thank you for supporting 8DO and allowing us to do all these crazy things. All we want to do is to try to change the landscape of what music can sound like and expand the horizon, the sonic, textural horizons of music. And it's only because of you that we can do that. So thank you so much. Let's dig out this crazy 66 stuff. Thank you.